This psychological framework produced a distinctive developmental outcome. It contributed to the formation of a generation marked by high levels of resilience, autonomy, and self-reliance. However, these outcomes were not neutral or cost-free. The same conditions that fostered independence also shaped emotional regulation, attachment patterns, and relational expectations in complex ways that are often overlooked in nostalgic accounts. To understand these effects, it is necessary to examine the sociocultural and psychological forces influencing parental behavior during this period. Maternal caregiving was shaped by a profound role conflict. The women's movement expanded the perceived range of acceptable identities for women, emphasizing autonomy, ambition, and self-actualization. However, institutional and cultural structures did not evolve at the same pace. Mothers were simultaneously encouraged to pursue personal fulfillment and held to rigid standards of domestic competence and emotional availability. This double bind produced chronic role strain. Within this context, encouraging children's independence often through prolonged unsupervised time functioned not only as a developmental belief, but also as a coping mechanism that allowed mothers to manage overwhelming demands. Variability in emotional availability, irritability, or disengagement can be understood less as individual failure and more as a psychological consequence of sustained, unresolved tension between competing roles. Paternal behavior was constrained by a different, but equally restrictive, psychological framework. Masculine identity during this era was narrowly defined around provision, authority, and emotional restraint. Emotional literacy and vulnerability were actively discouraged from early childhood. As a result, many fathers lacked both the language and the internal permission to engage in emotionally responsive caregiving. Behaviors often interpreted as emotional distance, minimal verbal affection, limited emotional engagement, emphasis on self-sufficiency were consistent with the socialization they themselves had received. Care was expressed instrumentally through financial support, physical presence, and protection rather than emotional attunement. These parental patterns did not emerge in isolation. They were shaped by earlier generations whose survival depended on emotional suppression and behavioral compliance. Particularly during periods of war and economic instability, emotional restraint was adaptive in those contexts, but its transmission into later family systems had unintended consequences. A hands-off parenting philosophy, combined with limited emotional discourse, created environments in which adverse experiences often went unrecognized and unprocessed. Alcohol misuse, physical punishment, chronic marital conflict, and untreated mental health conditions were frequently normalized. These experiences were not framed as psychological stressors, but as ordinary features of family life. Critically, children were rarely provided with interpretive support to contextualize these experiences. In the absence of explanation, children constructed meaning independently, often internalizing responsibility for circumstances beyond their control. From a developmental perspective, this fostered patterns of hyperindependence, emotional suppression, and heightened sensitivity to others' emotional states. These adaptations were functional within unpredictable or emotionally unsafe environments, but often persisted into adulthood. Similarly, disciplinary practices emphasizing unquestioned obedience reflected beliefs about hierarchy and social order, while intended to promote stability and respect for authority. They also shaped enduring patterns in how individuals relate to power, conflict, and self-expression. Some developed compliance-oriented strategies, others oppositional identities, and many adopted conflict-avoidant behaviors rooted in early associations between disagreement and threat. Importantly, the strengths and limitations of this developmental context are inseparable. The same mechanisms that cultivated competence and resilience also constrained emotional processing and relational flexibility. These outcomes were not the result of malice or neglect, but of historically situated belief systems that were experienced as objective truths rather than cultural choices. Understanding this framework allows for integration rather than blame. It clarifies how individual strengths and vulnerabilities emerge from the same source, and provides a basis for intentional adaptation with awareness. Later generations are positioned to retain the benefits of autonomy and resilience while addressing the emotional and relational capacities that were previously underdeveloped.